So, welcome back to TransAtlantic Productions. Today, we're diving into our Voices for Liberation segment with a groundbreaking thinker, Dr. Jared Ball. Dr. Ball is a professor of communication studies at Morgan State University, my alma mater, a prolific author and the author of Black Power Media. His critically acclaimed work, The Myth of Black Buying Power, challenges mainstream narratives about Black economic empowerment. In a world where consumerism is often touted as a path to equality, Dr. Ball's research exposes the systemic traps hidden beneath these claims. Join us as we unpack how racial capitalism shapes these myths and explore visions for true liberation. Dr. Ball, thank you for being here. And I just wanted to get started. I just to let the transatlantic audience know, I became aware of Dr. Ball, I guess about 15 years ago on Black Agenda Report. And because I'm a big fan of Glenn Ford, and I think the world is not as worse off without a journalist like Glenn Ford. That was the days before social media, so I had to literally religiously go to blackagendareport.com every week to see the latest writing on Glenn Ford. And then I would hear this young brother on there who sounded kind of hip. I didn't know what he looked like, but I knew his name was Dr. Jared Ball. I was like, okay, all right, I'm somewhat of a youth at the time. But and then I was excited to know, I was in Silver Spring at the time, but he was in Maryland. And he taught at my alma mater. So as I went down the rabbit hole and consumed more of Dr. Ball's content and his research, I really became impressed with the brother, specifically in the area that we're going to tackle today, the myth of Black buying power. And and we hope to have Dr. Ball on as often as possible. And so show him some love. I mix what I like in the YouTube channel, which we will discuss at the end. But we will start with a few questions. Dr. Ball, your book's title references a widely cited myth. Can you define what the myth of Black buying power is and why it's misleading?
Sure. First of all, thank you for very much for the invitation, and thank you for the shout out to Glenn Ford. Um, he still to this day, I think, is if not the best ever in anybody's Black Mount Rushmore, so to speak, for journalism and broadcasting, and should be remembered. Uh, so yeah, salute to you for that, and to him, may he rest in power. Um, so the myth of Black buying powers is something that I think a lot of us in activist spaces have heard for a long time. It's just the argument that Black people have. Well, now it's said to be over $2 trillion in buying power, and were Black people to have greater degrees of financial literacy and be more mature and responsible in spending and saving, that buying power could be turned into actual economic and political power. And that's where the myth is. The myth is that there is this pool of money that can be used in ways to overturn the condition of Black people. And that's not true. Buying power originates in government and private sector statistics at the turn of the 20th century, looking to figure out a way for the elite to pay working people just enough that those people won't rebel and could be have enough money to buy the products they were helping to produce, and therefore create the consumer-based economy that we live in, and that enriches an ever increasing, decreasing number. So in other words, it's just always getting worse in terms of the decreasing percentage of the population that ends up with all the wealth. And now we live in a world but a country where 800 people are worth over $6 trillion. And that all is the result of the economy in the United States, where working people go to work, pay taxes, shop, consume, pay bills, and all of that exchange creates all this wealth that ends up in the hands of a few. And then it's mythologized into something that could be done, that could be different. In this case, were Black people to do something different with what little money Black people have. And then the mythology obscures the reality of the hostile and unequal relationship Black people have to the economy and just how bad things are. And then, of course, what would need to be done to change it. So that's what the myth is in short. Yeah.
Um, and that's a great, and that's what I understood it to be also. Uh, we seem to, even after the fact that you revealed this, and you kind of went on a campaign just after the book was released, and it still seems like that myth is not being challenged by anyone else but you, and not many others at this time. Which is why I feel it's important to kind of continue and be repetitive about this. That no, this Black people have this type of spending power per year annually, and we'd be the fifth largest, or whatever rank we are in a given year as far as the amount of money that we have. That needs to really be said over and over, because we're in a situation where perhaps we're probably in our worst economic position ever in this country, and I think bursting that myth will be should be one of the things that we attack in order to wake our people up. But with that said, so it sounds like this sounds like a something that has a lot of power behind it and has a lot of teeth, because apparently it has taken hold within our community in terms of the belief that we have this type of buying power. Where does this myth originate?
So again, I mean, it originates with consumer spending data and cost of living survey data. Again, around the turn of the 20th century, the Bureau of Labor Statistics and sort of a combined, unified effort with the ruling elite, the political and economic elite of the country, the corporate elite. Again, just to try to stabilize and ultimately prevent rebellion. I mean, that's really what the point was to figure out the pressure point. How little can we pay workers without them rebelling? As it pertains to Black people, it really gets weaponized after the Second World War. And this is part of a broader project. I mean, this is, maybe we can come back to this, but this is, I'm really dealing with a subset of a broader project as it targets post the Second World War, as the United States wanted to reseed itself as the singular dominant power in the world. Among many other things that it did was it wanted to rebrand its relationship with Black America. So it began to encourage Black entrepreneurialism, Black bourgeoisie, Black business community, Black commercial press, and worked to find a way to, again, promote an idea of the potential for Black people to achieve middle-class status in this country, that there was no need for civil or human rights struggle. There was no need for protest. There was just a need for Black people to become more financially literate, become more middle class, and then to become good American citizens. And because America was wanting to promote itself after the Second World War as the new form of democracy and freedom, under the flag of American capitalism and its fraudulent propagandized wedding of the concept of capitalism to democracy to freedom. It was targeted to Black people as, again, you can Black business your way, Black middle class your way into freedom. You don't need to have any real struggle. And then there became this incestuous relationship with the Black press. So I talk about John H. Johnson and the Selling the Negro documentary and his goal of promoting a Black middle class to the government and to the white corporate world as a group that was, again, not threatening and was here ready to be good American citizens, paying taxes on time, and, of course, consuming the products that white advertisers would want to sell. So this incestuous relationship that I end up describing is one between the Black commercial press that needs ad revenue to survive. It can't survive off of and this is a parallel analogous to Black business. The Black press cannot survive on Black subscriptions alone. Black people don't have enough money. So the only way for a press to survive is to have white advertising. The only way to attract white advertising is to promise white advertisers that you have a Black audience that can buy their product. So here comes buying power. And then you have, in selling the Negro, you see the Secretary of Commerce, the corporate community, and the Black press all coming together to say, hey, America's great and you can do whatever you want as long as you have your money right and do well. And, and the corporate world is invited to have a healthy working relationship with the Black press, and they promote equally an unreal mythological economic relationship between Black people in this society and the society and what the economics of this society actually are in general. So it's a mythology of capitalism, a mythology of Black capitalism, and with this being a subset of Black buying power. And I should say, as I point out in the book, I mean, my work, and I just happen to have a copy here. I talk about this in my book. My work is a subset of other people's work, starting with The Black Bourgeoisie by E. Franklin Frazier, or The Myth of Black Capitalism by Earl Ofari Hutchinson, or The Many People, from Abram Harris to Du Bois to eventually people like Malcolm X to Harry Haywood. There's so many people over the years who have pointed out and called out this mythology. So I'm just adding very late to all of this, the specific argument around buying power to show how this regurgitating concept and myth keeps confusing our communities as to what the situation is. So that's So that's in effect what I'm trying to address here.
So that was a lot. So you mentioned John H. Johnson. That's the publisher, John H. Johnson.
Yeah, Ebony Jet Magazine, John H. Johnson Publications. Yep.
So you're saying just I'm a layman, right? You're the scholar. Just considering the audience. So like, what we were basically sold in these publications, for the most part, was success in America for the most part, right? Like in Jet Magazine, you had the weddings of the week, and then you had these high
beauty of the week.
Right.
A lot of celebrity, a lot of Black business, a lot of beauty, hair care product sales, all that kind of stuff. And it was Johnson's. And I cite other people's work so people can follow up to get more of the details. But what Johnson was doing was offering, again, a very Black middle class version of struggle. So while there was civil rights movements evolving, more radical, eventually Black power and Black liberation movements evolving, John H. Johnson was sort of walking that middle ground of saying, I want to promote Black beauty and Black excellence, but within the context of business, entrepreneurialism, middle class success, with the idea, and there's something I've been quoting increasingly more often, that the John D. Rockefeller types of the world, the truly ruling white elite of the world, have been saying for a long time that they want to promote the mythology of Black capitalism and Black entrepreneurialism, because in their words, Marisa Baradaran has written has done some of the work I'm quoting here, but in their words, the language was scattered success breeds universal hope. The point being, the white ruling elite wants to promote the scattered success of a few Black businesses, a few Black athletes, a few Black celebrities, a few Black politicians, because the goal is that it will create universal hope among the Black community that they can find their fortune and good life within this United States and this current construct of a capitalist white supremacist colonial society. And the goal is, in part at least, if not in whole, to make sure Black people don't rebel, because the inequality is going to get worse. This is something else I can point out in the book. The material conditions of Black people is getting worse. Income, the gap in income is still 15 cents on the dollar. Black wealth is still headed to zero by 2050. So this idea that we have this buying power and that we're only misusing it because of our own ignorance and backwardness and illiteracy financially is all part of the myth.
Or buying too many Jordans, something like that, right? So it's like,
So, but again, yeah, right. I mean, but this is one of the threads that I do want to and intend to pull when in this work, that if instead of teaching us how this economy works, again, a 70% based on consumption economy, if you don't consume, the economy collapses. So instead of telling people not to buy the Jordans, we should be telling people we should create public policy that says the wealth created from the purchase of those Jordans should better benefit all of us, not just the owner of Nike and not just the corporate world. But if I'm spending $200 on a pair of shoes, X percent of that should be redistributed back in some kind of way, either via healthcare, free education, housing, debt relief, name it. In other words, because again, we're creating through all this consumption more than $20 trillion in GDP in this country every year. And yet we're being told that we are being immature and irresponsible by doing the shopping. No, the 20 trillion, we're told to go shopping. That's why a $600 billion a year industry of advertising exists, to encourage us to go shopping. Because if you don't shop, then the restaurants close, the stores close, the owners, the stock value in those businesses goes down, and the economy collapses. So again, what we need is a movement that says respect my consumption. Honor my consumption. Don't tell me I'm foolish for spending $20 on a latte and $300 on some shoes. You advertise the situation that encourages me to do that. So we should all benefit from that. I just helped create all this wealth. Again, even think of it on the other level, or in a different way. When you go buy those shoes, you are supporting. Now, it's a wildly exploitative industry, so that should be addressed too. But in at least theoretically, you're supporting an industry where people are being paid to make the shoes, to sell the shoes, to transport the shoes, to make sure the lights work in the shoe factory, to clean the floors in the shoe. Like, there's a whole bunch of people being employed here. So if we don't buy the shoes, all those people lose jobs. All those people, so what we should be saying is, buy the shoe, buy all of that stuff, and then make sure that the workers are paid better, that they have better health care, better benefits, more vacation time, and that we, through our consumption, having created all this wealth, we get the same. And that's how it should be taught to us, so that once upon a time during the labor movement, it used to be said, Americans were told, we know you're going to pay a little bit more for your product here than you might in other parts of the world. But the trade-off is that you pay more so that the worker has a decent salary and time off and health care and all this other, like it was supposed to be a trade-off, not something that results exclusively in 800 people being worth $6 trillion. And I hope that number really starts to sink in. The level of inequality here is ridiculous. So that's in some small way what I hope my work will help get people to think about, that don't tell me to do better with my little bit of a paycheck and to tell other poor people that they should be more responsible with their little bit of a paycheck. No, those people should be encouraged to develop movements that call for public policy that says, you've already contributed. You went to work, you paid a bill, you paid taxes, you bought candy, you went to a movie, you streamed something on YouTube. All of that is consumption and generates revenue. So we've already done the work. The only problem is we don't have a system and we don't have a policy that brings back the benefit of all that good, the work and the goods and services that we produce and provide. We don't benefit from it. And then we're told the mythology of, well, that's because you're bad with money. You don't know how to save and you spend inappropriately. That's ridiculous. That's the myth.
Yes, sir. So just to stay on the press somewhat, I interviewed David Hundayan, who was like one of the foremost investigative journalists on the continent. Young guy, age 34, brilliant, but he's been all over this USAID thing, which is kind of having a similar material impact on the continent where it's kind of overinflating the economy in a lot of these countries, just by the mere granting of all these billions of dollars in some cases. And how he frames it in a lot of his reporting is that majority of the press have been courted to write excellent stories about some of the work that USAID is doing when they're in fact not doing it. But by being able to fly a Kenyan reporter out to Europe to some type of convention related to USAID funding or a program that receives funding, the press have kind of done an injustice uh, all over the continent by not reporting the accuracy of some of these programs that are the money's poured into these countries when in fact they're actually buying the politics of the country by way of the United States. And I brought that up to say, are there outside of John H. Johnson, are there similar cases in which our press is being courted, specifically Black press?
Oh, I mean, what I just started with John H. Johnson to show the process starting after the Second World War and in the 1950s. By now, as I show in my book, the problem is in many ways worse. It's been spread out over through a digital media environment and largely obscured or hidden by that process. So what do I mean by that? So like right now, Pickett, the NNPA, the Newspaper Publishers Association, which is the collective of the commercial Black press here in the United States. They work with they work with people like them, including people like Roland Martin, who has a very popular platform targeting the Black community, a longtime Black press person. All of them work with the entities that produce these misunderstood buying power reports, and they, in their own reporting, often promote buying power mythology because what they're trying to do is attract more ad revenue. So the problem that started with John H. Johnson, or that I identify as sort of starting with John H. Johnson, it really precedes that, but has been magnified and worsened today. So, before he got into his more recent legal troubles, when he was leading Revolt TV, Sean Combs did the same thing. That is, go out and make these promotional tours saying, I own a Black press outlet and the white corporate world does not advertise with us as much as they do with other people. So they should respect our audiences and respect our Black dollar. And Roland Martin does the same thing. The NNPA does the same thing. And it sounds like a very Black and progressive message, but what they're really saying is white people give me more money to produce content that will not upset you as our advertising base. So for all it may appear to be Black in messaging and content, it's all certainly politicized and framed in a certain way that will not upset white advertisers. So Roland Martin still has to go get McDonald's money and Toyota money and Pepsi money. And what that ends up doing is unconsciously or not, it assures them that I'm not going to do any kind of reporting that's going to upset you. So I may talk Black this and Black that, but ultimately I'm just supporting the Democratic Party, which is as left politically as people are allowed to be. and still get money, and will praise your products. We will not raise critical questions about capitalism, the Black community's relationship to a colonial capitalist apparatus. We're not going to certainly promote socialism. None of those things, because that's understood to be a threat to the advertising base that they want to attract. So what you end up with is a symbolically Black media environment targeting a Black audience that is very white and conservative in its funding, its political framing. So you get a Black audience that, in the context of this topic, is routinely misled uh, uh, and misinformed, and therefore less capable of understanding the myth. And therefore, when someone like me, or historically, I was even just looking again at what E. Franklin Frazier said 100 years ago was the response of the Black bourgeoisie and business community to his work. And his was more thorough and more aggressive in calling them out. Mine is just a smaller subset of that work, but the response has been largely the same. A lot of ignore, omit, misrepresent, a lot of hostility. The dissolution of even long-term friendships, because there is a lot of confusion, and then there is a political unwillingness to upset the advertising apple cart and have honest discussions with Black audiences and Black people about how economics work and what our relationship is to this system. So
you're saying any number of things that have been rock the vote perhaps would fall under something like that. That project, I guess the McDonald's Gospel series, anything where you have corporations that put a Black face on their brand, and then it serves, all of this serves their interests.
Well, because again, we have to just to be fair to the people I'm even being critical of. Yes, we disagree, but the reality of commercial media is that if you do not appease these big advertisers, you don't make any money, or you don't make the same kind of money. So, and a lot of the people in the Black press, the commercial Black press in particular, they want to be part of the Black bourgeoisie. They want to be the Black middle class. They want to be relatively comfortable. So that requires salaries and revenue that you can't get just on Black subscriptions, on Black people buying your content or paying for your content. Black people do not have the kind of money to create the wealth that the Black middle class hopes to attain. So there's always going to be a limit. If your target audience is Black, you are automatically targeting one of the most oppressed and exploited communities, certainly in this country, and therefore there's going to be a ceiling on how well you're going to be able to do. There is no pathway to being rich, so-called successful, or famous unless white people sign on, either as advertisers, consumers, supporters, or whatever. And the commercial Black press is in no different position than anyone else in that regard.
Yes, sir. So this is, I have to simplify it. So this is like, in a way, yeah, I'm gonna go over there and get some of that white money, right? So it's like, basically, when you hear those types of conversations along the lines, is okay.
Listen, I used to use this in my class. There's the Super Bowl stuff notwithstanding, Kendrick Lamar a couple years ago, and I used to show this in my class all the time. He did a Cash App commercial that I encourage people to go look up, because this Cash App commercial perfectly explains or summarizes the point I'm getting at here. The commercial starts off with a close-up on a regular brother that you don't know, and he's talking in regular African-American vernacular English, and he's saying, I'm trying to get my money right, and I got this plan, and whoop, 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 and I'm trying to doop, 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 doop. And then the camera pulls back, and you see he's talking to Kendrick. Kendrick is listening, and then Kendrick turns, and you see Kendrick starts to talk, and then and starts to take what this brother is saying to him and turning it into a more professional language. And then you see him talking to that Kendrick is himself talking to a white man who is the business executive. I don't know if he's officially with Cash App or just meant to represent more broadly the banking community, but he's the white man. And the white man listens to Kendrick, and he says, and Kendrick is saying, oh, so what my friend is saying is that he had attempted to improve his financial status by investing in a small business, his barbershop, and then things didn't really go the way that, they're doing. And then the white man says, okay, well, what you need to do is tell your friend, and he starts breaking down all that, financial language, and he needs to invest. And then Kendrick takes the white man's, and he turns to the brother, and he starts breaking it down and saying, this is what you got to do, my man. You got to flip it and do, woo, 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 and do. And then you see, and the commercial is perfectly exemplifying the role of celebrity, Black commercial media. It is taking the interests and the goals and the desires of the Black community, distilling them into a form, packaging them into a form that whites are finding comfortable and can exploit themselves. And then taking the very white conservative capitalist banking messaging and then in reverse. And that's where Kendrick becomes the Black press. And they take a very white conservative banking message, spin it into some nice sounding Black language and with pretty Black people and pictures and then present it to the Black community as something Black, as something radical, as something liberatory, as something maybe even originating from the well of Black brilliance. And that's the myth. In effect, that's the myth. The myth is a very, Black capitalism, Black buying power. These are very white, anti-Black conservative philosophies that have been rebranded and promoted as something positive for the Black community. It's diabolical.
Now, I've never seen that commercial. So you, as someone being a professor, you're around a lot of young people. What was their reaction? Did you have a discussion around that?
Oh yeah, in the context of my classes, it becomes very clear, and we even did a little bit of it on the YouTube show and all of that. But it becomes very clear when you see it. Certainly, I mean, just like any kind of any source of learning, and this is why, as my homeboy likes to point out, and he's right, reading is different from studying. Reading a book is cool, but studying a book as part of a sort of a guided exploration with expertise, it makes it a very different experience. So yeah, they might have seen the commercial, but when we get to sit and break it down in the context of a class, of a semester, of other materials, of a different sort of political frame, yeah, they see it immediately. It's not that complicated. It just sometimes, again, needs that sort of curation. And if you want to see it, I'm putting a link. I just look for it. I'll put the link in the chat here if you want to if you ever want to just take a look at it yourself. I mean, it's called The Balcony. They even gave it the name. the and you can see it. Yes, I'm looking at it. All right, that's the direct YouTube link. But you can see. Yeah, so it starts off, you see the brother talking on the balcony, and then you see him in the silhouette, and then you see it moving over, and then you realize he's talking to Kendrick.
Yes, sir. What I'll do is try to weave it into the video when I do some editing here for more context so the audience can at least see it for themselves. I appreciate you sharing that. So I don't know if I want to go down how much you're able to disclose about your interactions in the classroom, because now you've made me very curious. How are the young people overall responding when you do have these conversations? It Is it something that they are taking to heart? At
I
minimum?
mean, listen, over the years, I get all there overwhelmingly the response is positive, I would say, and overwhelmingly people, and again in the context of a classroom, it's they get it, and it's usually a positive experience. There are times there's usually at least one or two in a class that resist. They are caught up in the propaganda and the mythology, and have never been taught how to think. I mean, that's something that we end up having to deal with in most of my classes. The American educational system does not prepare certainly Black people, but most people to think. They tell you how to manage the school system, how to remember something regurgitated on a test and get an A. They're not teaching us, they're telling, it's the difference between what to think and how to think. So I'm trying to teach people how to think.
Yeah.
So sometimes there's some resistance, and we and it's expected, and it's okay. And we work our way through it. And I invite everybody to send me those emails that I sometimes get years later saying, my bad, Dr. Ball. It took me a while, but you were right. And I wrote a few of those myself as a student, to be fair. I mean, I had a couple professors that it took me years to catch up to I'm still catching up to what Dr. James Turner was teaching us. So I get it. But yeah,
Absolutely. No, thank you for sharing that. Now, as far as go deeper into conspiratorial. Now, say this part of this larger effort against our people in the United States. You mentioned Commerce Department, and you mentioned corporations. What other agencies might be managing this directive? I understand that may be a whole different can of worms, but are there? Is it just an effort? Is it just profitable, or is there like a larger agenda just to kind of keep us unaware of which?
no, I don't think it's. Oh, no. I don't think it's so I don't get to this much in the book because I was trying to stay focused just on the topic of buying power. And I think, and I've been happy to, not happy, but more willing to admit it publicly now. I think I was mistaken in that. I should have been more overt and just made my direct political argument. But I was hoping that my goal initially was, I just want people to see the myth before we get into assessing the politics or my specific analysis or anything. I just wanted to that was at least my thinking. But I think I should have just laid it all out, and we'll do more of that going forward. But it's not just about making money. So I do talk a little bit about in the book that there is a broader project happening here, particularly after the Second World War, when the United States is establishing itself as the singular dominant power in the world. And there's a lot of intelligence agency evolution. There is an evolution of the mechanism of psychological warfare and counterinsurgency, and all of these tactics that, in other words, the methods being used to conquer Korea, Vietnam, that were used to conquer Europe, and previously the African continent, were being brought back home to be applied within the United States to target Black and other communities here. So the goal, again, sort of is where I started with buying power. The goal was not about extracting more profit. The goal was about managing people's public opinion with the goal of preventing rebellion. And initially, it was beyond just the Black community. This was targeted at the entire working labor force. How do you make sure because white workers were rebelling, white workers were unionizing, white workers were going on strike, white workers were sabotaging the factories because they were saying, we're producing all this wealth for you and you're not giving us anything. Our conditions aren't improving. So the tactic of suppressing that was again applied specifically to Black people through this buying power, in part, and Black capitalism and other mechanisms to suppress any potential radical desire for freedom. So the corporate world, the intelligence community, the advertising community, the military, the elite academic community, all have played a role. They're all always in some sort of collaborative effort to distort, manipulate, suppress any form of radicalism, and particularly among Black communities. So yeah, it's not just about making money. In fact, money is itself more about managing social relationships. And so that's the ultimate goal here. And I think, and this is the point that buying power is meant to address, that convince Black people not to rebel. They have hope. Their problems are their own. They're creating it. There's nothing happening here. There's no colonial capitalist structure imposing on them. And so, yeah. So I haven't done the work to prove the connection, but I think if people look at the recent work of Orasami Burton, Tip of the Spear, if people look at even some of my other work, I think that in other people's work, there is an overlap of buying power, Black capitalist mythology, the prison, the increasing prison environment, the counterintelligence program and its destruction of Black liberation, the promotion of a Black middle class and a Black bourgeoisie to work against the rest of the Black community. All of these things are involved in happening. And again, buying power is just one small little sliver of that process.
So you're saying you're going to go into that, potentially write a book, or at least start?
Well, what I'm working on, what I'm trying to work on now is kind of looking more at. So it kind of goes back to what you started, I think, this discussion with, that why has there been so much resistance in the Black community to critiques of Black capitalism? So I'm really looking at the development of the narrative of Black capitalism and how it's evolved, why it's evolved, and how it's been distributed. So that will involve looking more, again, at some of these other structures and trying to connect some of the dots. And yeah, but still some work on that.
I'll check out McBurton's work, but I personally, at least from a social media standpoint, don't really see people having those levels of conversations specific to our people in the United States. So I really look forward to it, and I think that's going to be the thing that makes you more known exponentially, because when you go down that road, a lot of people's ears perk on that. So,
well, maybe, and then what I'd also like to do is at some point, maybe, but I'm not making the promise, is to connect the dots to what's happening on the African continent, because there's a lot of similar arguments being made there as well, that private industry and enterprise is more important than public policy or nationalization. And there's a lot of arguments being made throughout the continent similarly to Black people, that, to African people, that you're not oppressed per se. You just haven't, we got corrupt leaders, and we just haven't properly been able to access the private, enterprise, community. And that's another, I think, a parallel, adjacent form of the myth that I'd like to help out with at some point, to the extent it's not already being done. Yeah.
I think you should have on David Hundeyin, because he's the subject matter expert. I mean, he's a Nigerian, but I think he has a strong grasp on what.
Hey, put us in touch. I'd love to catch up. I would love to learn more and begin building with people who might be able to help me, or vice versa with this stuff. Yeah.
Yes, sir. I'll try. It's kind of how we met. I just sent shot a message. He said, okay. And we're here. So, I'll try to build a rapport to get that done. He has 1 million subscribers on X and he's constantly
Mm.
posting quality information, so about this with citing sources and everything. And I think that's right up what you're just talking about in an African context.
Mm.
So with that said, won't keep it long. And you have, I mean, I'm feeling the energy all the way here in Mombasa, Kenya. The intensity of your knowledge of the subject, and I would love to hear more eh, down the line. But and I think for me, this was kind of my contribution to the entire thing of letting people know by having you on here. But how could the transatlantic audience and others that are able to hear this make their contribution to letting something like this be known? What's the call
I
to
mean, they could
action?
just check out the work online. There, I'd love to hear from more of the Continental family, and salute to East Africa. I haven't been over there since 1996, but did pass through briefly Tanzania and Kenya, and so and Zanzibar. So salute. And but yeah, I'm easily found. The work is found. Whether it's the YouTube or the website or whatever, I'm easily found. The book is, I'd love to hear more from folks. And I'm always happy to come back and build with you as well. So I mean, but yeah, yeah. Hmm.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it. So off the script, favorite rap album of all time.
I don't know about just, man, favorite rap album of all time. I don't know if I could come up with just the one.
Five in no particular order. Like,
Well, so my top five includes a non-rap album. The one album that I have to have and will never would only, the only album I have to have is Donny Hathaway's Double Live album. But I don't know. I would have to have Dead President's Let's Get Free would have to be in there. I would have to, that is a classic, legendary album. I would have to have um like a Pharaoh Monch mixtape. He's my favorite MC. I would have to, what I would really want, and I forget the DJ's name, forgive me, but I would really want the album called Yassine Gay. That is, it's a combination of Yassine Bey, formerly known as Malcolm of Mos Def, and Marvin Gaye. And the album is called Yassine Gay, and it's a blend of Mos Def and Marvin Gaye, and it is one of the best mixtapes I've ever heard in my life. It is phenomenal. I'd have to have probably, I don't know, something. So, yeah, that's who else? I don't know. In terms of actual full albums, maybe so Let's Get Free, Yassine Gay. I would have to have, see, I need like a mixtape, like that J period mixtape of Lauryn Hill. I might need that because she's unfortunately she just didn't put out enough albums, but she's I don't know that, as long as it's got Pharaoh, Yassine, El Boogie, Dead Prez, and then give me a I'm originally from DC, so I need a little pocket so give me some vibe band. I need some go-go in my life. I need some
Yeah.
Yeah, VYBE. It's called, or more popular, more easy. I'll go just to blanket the Chuck Brown Band. I need some Chuck Brown. I need the legendary Chuck Brown. People should Google. And so you were in Baltimore, so you're not close enough. Like Baltimore doesn't rock with DC like that. But the go-go community, Chuck Brown Band. So yeah, I'll give me Chuck Brown, Donny Hathaway, Lauryn Hill, Yassine Gay, and Pharaoh Monch. That's the 5 I'm rocking with in this interview.
No, I was the reason why I kind of was about because you're not that old, right? So like I was expecting you to be like.
Well, I'm 53. I don't know. I'm 53, so you know.
And for me, I used to go like I played football at Morgan, so half the team was PGDC guys.
Oh, right.
And we
right.
would meet on campus because practice starts in August before everyone come. So those are the first friends I had. I got exposed. I was a New Yorker here in Brooklyn, and they're like, "What is that?" So love the Ibex, Taj Mahal, and all those guys.
Wow. Okay. All right. Okay.
I was in it. Yeah.
Okay.
So appreciate it. This is a treat for me, bro.
No, the honor is mine. I appreciate it anytime.
Hopefully I held it together and composed, but truly appreciate it and would love to have you back. I think your subject matter, your content is appropriate for the transatlantic audience. So love to have you back, as many times as we can. But thank you so much.
It's an honor. Peace and salute to your audience. Shout out to the continent as well. And anytime. Happy to be back.